Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Reframe series. You are joining us for season 2, and we hope this podcast helps you unpack what it means to be Desi locally and globally. So, this episode is actually going to be split up into 2 parts, which you'll be watching over the next 2 weeks. So, before we get started, please like and subscribe so we can keep growing. I'm going to share with you our very special guest, Saumya. She is a research associate at the Global Center for Environment and Energy at Ahmedabad University. She also works on the Opportunities for Climate Mitigation and Sustainable Development OPTIMISM project, which is funded by the UK Natural Environment Research Council as part of the Research Council's Towards a Sustainable Earth program, and the DBT at Ministry of Science and Technology, Government of India. Saumya is also an element scientist for the COVID element in the third assessment report on cities and climate change, anchored by Urban Climate Change Research Network, UCCRN, at Columbia University. She believes in data-driven decision-making and the use of high-quality research for advocacy. Her research focuses on the intersection of urban planning and climate change, urban and regional equity, and climate resilience. Saumya holds a master's in planning degree from the University of Southern California Sol Price School of Public Policy, with a specialization in sustainable development, and a bachelor's degree in planning from CEPT Ahmedabad. During her time at CEPT, she received a prestigious UK-India Education and Research Initiative Scholarship to study comparative urban development and planning. Saumya also received the Best Gender Thesis Award in 2017 for her undergraduate thesis, Gender and Public a case study of Sabarmati Riverfront. So Saumya and I first met when we were in graduate school at USC for the Masters of Urban Planning program. And I personally know how passionate she's been about pursuing her interests in urban planning projects around housing and economic development issues with Los Angeles, as well as India. So I'd love to ask you, Saumya, what initially sparked your interest in studying urban planning?
Hi, Arpita. Thank you so much for having me on this. I'm so excited. So ever since I was in middle school, I actually loved all subjects. And what happens in an Indian high school is that the students are required to choose a stream when they're about to finish their 10th grade. They have to either pick would they like to take humanities or commerce or science stream. And that was a very difficult part for me because I actually loved everything. And I ultimately ended up picking the science stream because I thought I loved that the most. But I always loved parts of like commerce, which was economics and a lot of other things there. And I loved humanities completely, like geography, science, everything else, social studies. So I picked up science, but I kind of told my parents because like parents are really important part of our career choices. So I told my parents somewhere around 11th grade that I don't think like a conventional Indian career choice that students have, like engineering or doctor, like medical school or lawyer, is like going to be a good fit for me. And I told them that I was gonna have to pursue something which has an amalgamation of more than just one stream, right? Because I look at things very like through a lot of dimensions. I don't have like a single lens at things, and I can't really have that linear thinking. So then we were looking for programs that could sort of do that. And what happens is that you have to appear for entrance tests for all different schools, right? And all the different programs. And somewhere around ninth grade, I think I had like a lot of these really like cool family friends that you kind of look up to, who used to talk about their friends who went to CEPT. And the way they talked about CEPT University was like this mythical land where you could just be like whatever you wanted to be, and it was liberating and freeing, and you could like the way they talked about their program looked like something I wanted to do. And so I was like around 10th 11th grade I got like really obsessed about getting into CEPT. And then like I didn't think of anything else. I just wanted to get into SEP because I thought it was gonna be this place where I could be myself, you know. So obviously, like, you know, I tend to sort of romanticize everything, but I do think that SEPT has to be like one of the best things that ever happened to me, and the way it sort of broadened my horizon and it let me be who I wanted to be was like I cannot imagine anything better happening. So urban planning, even in SEPT, we have like, so SEPT, what it does is it just sort of is a specialization kind of a university which deals only with human settlements or environmental kind of topics. So they offer like all kinds of programs, but centered around that, right? So we had a School of Urban Design, we had School of Building Science and Construction, then we had an architecture school, and we had an urban planning school. And I appeared for like all of them. I almost got into all of them, but then the curriculum for urban planning was just really calling. So yeah, so like my long answer is that it was really meant to be. Like I got into a lot of programs, but this has to be the best fit. And this was like to the last minute, like the admissions process in India is really hectic. So like till they call your name for you to like be admitted into the university, you really don't know if you'll make it, because we have these merit lists and there are these fairs where like they will tell you how you're faring in the point system, because some, I think a lot of like 7 8,000 people must have appeared for this exam and we only had 60 seats. So it was like a tough one, but like I made it. So yeah, and like has to be the best thing that happened to me.
Yeah. So what, when you actually got in, like, what was really resonating? I think you talked a lot about kind of inclination you have towards bigger, the big picture and
Yeah,
big picture thinking. And so
yeah.
what about this program, brought that out for you? And what about the curriculum, like, made you really enjoy and think about having this as a future career path?
It was like when I read the curriculum, they only sort of gave us the session plan for like the semesters and then very detailed coursework for the first year. And when I looked at the coursework for the first year, like you will not believe, it had everything. It had sociology, it had rural elements into it, like the parts of rural planning and how do you do that, because India has a huge sort of rural population. It had economics, it had history, because urban history is a huge part of urban planning. It had sort of climate science and environmental planning, because you really can't have planning without sort of looking in incorporating in climate. Then it had principles of like design, like hard classes which just tell you what design is in terms of architecture. And then it had a lot of coursework on building like skills, so building hard skills and soft skills both. So we actually had very dedicated curriculum for visual communication, so like cartography, line drawing, sort of a lot of these kind of things that you would not otherwise understand. So now like, and they trained us so well, like now when I look at a map or when I make a map, I exactly know what I want to highlight, and thanks to those curriculum, like those coursework, and the professors who taught us so well. So it was just literally like when I saw that curriculum, I was like, the child in me like just exploded, because I was like, wow, this is what I really wanted to study. And I've never liked being confined in like just one domain, you know, because I find like I personally believe that we need to not work in silos and do more sort of interdisciplinary intersection kind of research. Also the kind of research I'm doing, it's very intersectional, because I think it's one of like, I don't know if it's a challenge or just I do not like the idea, but I don't like that lateral, not like the linear thinking and being constrained to one domain. I know that's how you get a specialization, but I'd rather like, you know, have a little bit of knowledge of everything. So yeah, it was really the coursework. Yeah.
Yeah, and it seems like you, from what you're sharing and not sharing, I would say that something I'm getting from you is that you actually had a really deep desire to want to do work that was focused on improving the landscape of India?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I do. A lot of the stories that I hear from my parents' generation and my grandparents, it felt like they lived in a kind of a cleaner, healthier India. And that just like is so um, counterintuitive, right? Because we've really progressed and we've done everything we've done now, right? Like with the technology boom, um, with the white revolution, the green revolution, all of those things kicking in. And you would believe that the India we live in right now, I mean, this will get a little controversial, but you would think that as a child, you would think that the India we live in right now with the metros running and all the business districts, it would be a better version. But when you sort of look at the kind of quality of life that we had, even as like a high school kid, I could figure out that my grandparents had like better access to like water and clean air and all of those things. And like, so I like, we have this running joke in the family. So all my grandparents, you know how Indian families have, like, we live in a joint families. So all my grandfathers and his brothers, we all like lived under the same roof, and they're all like in their 90s, super healthy. They cycle everywhere. They're able to do everything like you would not imagine a 90-year-old being able to do at least like our generation. So I just always felt that, well, there has to be something that's not being that sort of we lost in our quest to be better. So yeah, and then like when I saw the urban planning program, it really like was like a calling. I don't know how much we've contributed to making it a better place, but like we're trying. So yeah.
Yeah, I think it's always really hard to know when you're in an interdisciplinary field like this exactly how much impact you are having.
Oh yeah.
But I think we are all just trying. And
Yeah.
I think like the work that you're doing sounds really amazing. So after doing that initial program at CEPT, what made you then decide that you wanted to study internationally? So move all the way from India to the US for 2 years to do a master's in urban planning degree.
Absolutely. I love that question. So actually what happened was midway during my undergrad, we some of the selected students received like a scholarship to go and look at planning and urban planning and design through a more sort of internationally comparative perspective. Because like planning, no matter how much you sort of gain expertise in it, the minute you change the context, all your laws and all your understanding of what works changes, right? So then sort of to have young minds understand that, the university had a lot of these international exchanges, and I was very fortunate to be selected for one of them, the UKIERI scholarship that happened. So a bunch of us were sent to Cardiff University. It was like a winter school, like how we have summer winter schools in the US, a very similar concept. So we were sent to Cardiff University, and we looked at how urban planning happens in the UK. And then we sort of tried to compare and contrast with how it happens in India. And it was very fascinating for me, that whole like journey, meeting people who are pursuing urban planning in an international context. And when I met that cohort for the winter school in UK, there were people from all over the world, right? So then we're all like discussing, and I must have been like what, 18, and we're like all discussing what is it like to be like a student of urban planning in like our own countries. And that sort of must have like always stayed with me. I didn't think upon it much. At that time, I was just like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. But it must have stayed with me. And then by the time we were deciding what to do, because, all Asian kids, they always get a master's. It's not like it's a no brainer. After your bachelor's, you of course get a master's. So another factor to like me thinking that I should get it internationally was also that, CEPT University, I'm really not trying to boast here, but it really is the best sort of school you can go to for urban planning. It's the oldest, and it was it was amazing. And I thought, like, if I've already gone to the best urban planning school in India, then might as well sort of, if I want to continue urban planning, then might as well change the context. And then sort of I did like a lot of inward looking, and I realized that, yeah, I really enjoyed that program, the winter school we had in Cardiff. And then by the time I sort of had also understood the importance of understanding a lot of methodological approaches, right? Because in India, the kind of urban planning we do is like one kind. So then, like in the US, the way we do master plans and basically they are all very done very differently. The processes are very different for ordinances and zoning, and like all of those are very different. So the more you get acquainted with different processes, the better of a planner you can become, is what like I thought, like at 20. So then I and you know what, I was actually doing an internship at Center for Urban Equity, which was in CEPT University. And so my undergrad dissertation guide, Dr. Darshini Mahadevia, she's fantastic. She used to head that center, and she always used to talk about, you know, international perspectives, comparative. And although she's like an expert on housing, and she really like voraciously writes about the global south perspective. But just to even understand the difference between the global south, the global north, you really need like a very sort of bird's eye perspective of what's happening everywhere, right? So basically, she encouraged me to, yeah, you know, look at other places. And we had two students, one from UCLA and one from USC, doing their internships here at the Center for Urban Equity. And so, like, having conversations with them sort of got me really interested. And then I applied. So I think I must have applied only to a handful of universities, because I was thinking, let's see how this goes. Because, you know, no one in my family has ever applied for an education abroad. I have to be like the first generation to be getting a higher education, let alone getting it abroad. So it was a very daunting process for me. And all of this while my CEPT coursework was going on, my undergraduate thesis was going on. It was really hectic. So I don't think I applied to a lot of universities, but I think I did sort of very strategically place them across the world. So like I applied in Singapore, in Canada, a couple of places in maybe US, and then one or two in Europe somewhere. So, and then I got good news from most places. And then because of all the time I had spent with those two interns at the center, and the way they talked about USC, you know, they really loved that place. And I thought that it's really important for me to be in a very sort of supportive, really collaborative environment. I don't really enjoy the really cutthroat kind of environment we have at a lot of universities. And the way they talked about USC felt like a good fit for me. So then I picked USC over everything else. And of course, like from looking at LA in all the movies, and like just the idea of Hollywood, that did play a tiny part into like us, like, yeah, I gotta go to, like, you know, see the Hollywood sign. But no, no, like seriously, like they talked about USC the way I would talk about CEPT. And I think like if that's an impression a university can leave on a student, then that's a good university to be in. So I just instinctively sort of picked USC.
How did you like your experience at USC, and like were there pieces of it that you found challenging, and were there yeah, like if you were sharing with like any of the folks watching or listening to this, like
Yeah.
kind of some advice or guidance from your time there, what would you want to say?
I loved my time at USC. Like really, it was amazing. I think CEPT was amazing in a lot of different ways. So CEPT really sort of kind of gave me the knowledge base that I really needed, and it was transformative in the ways like a high school student needs to evolve into being a professional of a field, right? That's everything. And the kind of coursework I learned there, that was tremendous. But then, like, I always thought that I need to, like, there was a lot of emphasis on hard skills and knowledge, right? But the soft skills part I thought was like a little bit lacking there, because like documentation, presentation, kind of those kind of things. Obviously, we were also very young. But then at USC, so this is where USC comes in. I think the way it did, like, it worked wonders, because the way they sort of incorporate soft skills in every single thing you do, right? The way you write your papers, like, I don't think anyone paid so much attention to the way I was writing my research, the way the professor at USC did. And we used to get such detailed feedback. And one feedback I have to tell you was so detailed that a professor said, you don't use enough these, like, they, like, and it was, I thought that was like amazing. So the amount of I mean, I think in terms of coursework, because I had 4.5 5 years of urban planning coursework already at CEPT, I thought I didn't find it very difficult. But I did know a lot of my colleagues, cohort, used to think that it was a little challenging. But I kind of felt at ease, because of course it was very rigorous, but I felt like I had some grounding. Because the first time, I have to remember, like, in the orientation week, the first time I entered the class, and I saw like the whole cohort. I thought to Prithvi, my best friend, that I told her, "Oh my God, I think we're the youngest," and I was like really nervous, because I thought everyone over here, they already know. I mean, English is already really good. It's their first language. They have great communication skills. They have like great interpersonal skills, and they all also seem to have come from different walks of lives, and have had done a variety of internships, jobs. It looked like in the introduction round, I felt like very sort of intimidated, that, oh my gosh, what have I got myself into? But then they sort of turned out to be the best, the sweetest, the most helpful, collaborative cohort ever. And I sort of thought that, when once you're like trained in India, you get used to that really sort of competitive, kind of a little cutthroat kind of an environment. And this, on the other side at USC, was just so collaborative, and it was so friendly. And because it was the first time I was also living away from family, I thought it was very comforting. So USC, in a lot of other senses, not just in terms of career, but in terms of like interpersonal skill development, in terms of like literally how to write emails, or like how to, like, the elevator pitch. We didn't have any of these things here in India. In general, we really don't have that focus at all. And sort of that gets you ahead. Like, we don't realize how much it helps, like when we're doing it, the networking nights that we had there. It was really difficult for me, because I'm not like a very like, I can't really like walk up to people and tell them what I've been doing in like 2 3 minutes. But like, they trained us well, and they told us, like, they gave us like tips. And I think that, like, they focused a lot on making us like better professionals, and I kind of really appreciate that. That's like something you can't learn otherwise, right? So that's why I sort of, USC has this really special place in my heart, because I think it kind of made me like a more polished person in general. Like, it made it easier for me to communicate my work, right? Because no matter how amazing your drawings are, your report is, but if you're not writing it well, then it's gonna get lost in somewhere. Like, it won't, people can't tell how interesting and amazing your work is till they can't see it well. So yeah, I think it USC was amazing. And for anyone who's like thinking of picking schools, who has like a lot of options right now and is thinking what to do, then I personally would say that it's such a difficult world out there, and our lives are already difficult. So if like you can be a part of a cohort, or if you can be a part of an institution that is very collaborative, encouraging, and sort of works on you, then there's nothing better you can choose, right?
Too, I could relate in so many ways, because I think like for me as well, it helped me in the same way in learning how to network and feeling more confident and how to talk to people and share my ideas. And it's a very supportive environment, which, having come from a much larger university for undergrad, where you kind of have to be very self-motivated in order to like do things. And it did feel like a very competitive environment. This USC definitely felt like a place where I would be able to communicate and be listened
Yeah,
to.
absolutely. I agree, like 100%. And also the coursework over there, I like the teaching style that we had. All my other sort of colleagues from India who did not go to CEPT University, they kind of thought that, like in India, we have like a very sort of set style of teaching, right? It's largely sort of already pre-decided, and there's not like a lot of room for creativeness to flow. It's kind of like really follow the text kind of teaching at a lot of places. I think it's changing, definitely, but especially like at CEPT, it was so liberating because they would just let us do whatever we'd like to do. They would, like, one of the first assignments was like, what is your interpretation of XYZ? And I was like, my interpretation? They're asking me, like, they're not telling me how to interpret it, they're asking me. So at USC also they did that, but at like a much bigger scale. So I remember they would give us good briefs about like what they expect, and then but would be like, this is your product, like you tell us what you'd like, even like in programs. So what that also does is it sort of incorporates a lot of that thinking capacity in you. Like you can tell for yourself what you like. So I think it was the mixture of making like all the interpersonal skills and communications, and then also enabling you to think for yourself, and not yourself in that sense, but like think how you can sort of do this for yourself, like your interpretation, your project. That was also very interesting. I don't think a lot of my others, so I had a lot of my cohort from CEP went to sort of pursue international masters internationally. So when I used to talk to them, it felt like USC was doing a much better job than like all the others, because like Prithvi and I, we used to like constantly be like on a high. Like we used to be so happy because it was also collaborative. Basically, they just made a really good environment for you to become like your own person.
Thank you for joining us for part 1 of the podcast. We will be back next week with the second portion, where we're going to delve a lot more into Saumya's career and kind of how she has managed to get to where she is after graduating from CEPT and USC. Please make sure to like and subscribe so that we can keep growing.